Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leathercraft, and we are well on our way to making a leather gun holster. Now, in Chapter 2, we've added that beautiful, clean basket weave, and we've ringed that with a camo or camouflage tool. Looks great. The coolest part, easy to do, and it looks very professional. All right, Chapter 3, we're going to drop in some hardware, add our liner, and do some edge work. That's going to set us up for Chapter 4, where we're going to prep to hand sew. All right, anything I use in this video, weaverleathercraft.com, or check below. We've got links there going to take you straight to the website. So let's do this. Let's step over here, add some hardware and a liner. Now, when we set our liner, we're going to drop our hardware in first, or at least this half of our snap and the female part of our Chicago screws. Then we'll lay our liner in behind that. That's going to protect our firearm. So let's start with our line 24 snap. Now, with the line 24, we've got our cap, obviously, and a post. Then we've got two female pieces. Basically, with the line 20 and 24, all we're doing is riveting these two onto the strap or project. These two will bite. If we get these reversed, it's not going to matter. But the way it's commonly done, all right, there's our back, naked back. I'm going to drop that in, and I'm going to take the female piece with the flange that's a little closer in. Let's drop our setter in there. There we go. Okay, notice that rolled down in there nicely. In fact, it can turn just a hair. Let's give it one more medium pop. There we go. Okay, set. Now, this is going to take some dye. When we go to dye this, that's not an issue. We'll be able to rub that off. Okay, let's jump over to our Chicago screws with our female pieces. Now, I like our decorative cap here because that just gives me a little more grip on the inside. So let's do this. I'm going to take one of these, and I'm going to drop a little Leathercraft cement just on the flange. All that's going to do is tack that in there. It's going to hold that until I'm ready to lay in my liner. So I'll add the other two with some glue. And there we go. Okay, so let's drop that in. I'm going to flip that over. Got to be careful. I've got glue on my fingers. Don't want to get that on my face. So now those are tacked in. Let's give that just about 5 minutes. Let that glue set. All right, we've given that about 5 minutes. That glue is tacked in nicely. So with our liner, we've overcut that because what we'll do is we'll glue this in and then we'll trim to our body. It's going to look just like it was die cut. But also too, I want to drop in an ink line because I'm going to run my glue over that line. Therefore, when we trim this, we're not going to have any holidays or air pockets. It's going to be a nice clean seal all the way around. All right, there we go. Okay, so let's set this aside. There we are. Now, with our other snaps, we're going to set those once we dye our strap and add our top coat. All right, with the barge, let's take this. Now, like I said, I want to go over my edge. There we are. But it's easy enough on our liner here. I'm not worried about getting glue on my surface, which would be, in fact, if I got some there and did that, that would be a disaster. But here, we don't really need to worry about it. I just need to work my way outside of that line, maybe a 1/4 inch, give or take. Okay, got my glue in. Now, first and foremost, with the barge, we need some good ventilation there. I've got some good ventilation in my shop here. But secondly, when we lay these together, they literally are going to act and react as one piece of leather. All right, now let's move that. And again, no worries here. No glue on my surface. But with this, we've got to go right to the edge, all the way around. But that's pretty easy to do and not worry again about glue on our surface because I can just lay that right on the edge of my table and I can just run my brush right off the edge. Now, I do want to be careful as I come back in. I don't want to get glue along the edge. It's not going to be a crisis if I do, but that's going to leave a spot that's not going to want to take dye or top coat. Well, it'll take top coat a little bit, but not well. So let's just brush right off our edge all the way around, then I'll fill in inside. Okay, there we go. We've got some glue there. No issues with it on our surface or on our edges. Good. Now, being contact cement, I'm going to give this about, let's say about 15 to 20 minutes to dry. Now, it's going to be very dry. It's going to look dry, but it's going to be tacky. That's what we want. All right, looks good. Appears dry. It's good and tacky. That's what we're looking for. Now, usually in this case, when I lay these together, I'll use a rolling pin. But with our hardware on this, that's not going to be that easy. But in all honesty, as long as we add some pressure around our hardware and our edges, we should be fine. Okay, that lays in nicely. Now I'm just going to take a second to work around my edges and work around my hardware just with my thumbs. But our leather's not wet, so not really worried about making an impression. There we go. Okay, we've got a nice liner in there. Looks good. So let's step over to our main table, trim this out, and do some edge work. Now, one quick note on liners. We're using a 7 to 8 ounce and a 2 to 3 ounce. If we bump up this liner weight, say 6 to 7, or maybe another 7 to 8, what we're going to have to do is bend our exterior and then lay our liner in behind that once it's bent. To me, that opens up a whole new can of worms. So a 7 to 8, 2 to 3 puts us roughly in the 10 ounce. That's a good weight for a holster. Now, new blade every time. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the body of my holster as my straight edge, and I'm going to keep my blade angle low. Now, if you're uncomfortable doing that, that's no issue. You can always add a straight edge and get a pretty clean cut. But again, in all honesty, if I lean that blade angle low, look at that cut. Much easier to do than it looks. And again, it looks just like it was die cut. So I'm going to cut all the way around my holster, and we'll have a clean piece to work with. And our last cut, there we go. Okay, look at that. Looks like it was die cut, just what we're looking for. Super easy to do. Okay, now we're going to add a groover. I add a groover to just about every line because it makes my edges look very finished. But the primary job here is for our stitch line. So we've got a cutting head, we've got a guide. I'm going to bump that guide against the edge of my leather. And I'm going to give this a little counterclockwise motion. There we go. Okay, that gives us that nice edge. Let's do that on both sides. In fact, we're just practicing now before we go to our final piece. There we go, looks good. Now, I can add multiple passes, but what I need to be cautious of with our groover is making too many passes where that turns into a tab. It's going to tear off. All right, so I'm going to groove both straps and our main body. And our last edge there on our strap. Okay, all three pieces are grooved. Now let's jump over to a number 2 bevel. With this, we're going to bevel, and think of bevel glass, same thing. What we'll do here is bevel both sides, front and back. We'll slick those, but over here, we're simply going to groove or bevel outside of our stitch line. We'll come back to that. And there we are. Okay, that looks good. Front and back on both sides there. Front and back, top and bottom. Now let's slick. We're simply going to add some water here. We'll slick again later, but for right now, this will get a good start. Now there we go. Just add a little water, but I want to be careful here. I don't want water to drain across the face of my project. Thus, if we have a lighter dye or no dye, that's going to leave a watermark or a water line. All right, so there we go. And a little bit down on the bottom there. Now, what's easiest to me is to lay this on the edge of my table. I'm going to take my second to the smallest groove. That's going to be perfect for our weight. I'm simply going to run my slicker back and forth. Now, pressure not the point here, more heat and friction. Now let's jump up to the wider groove and finish that out. There we go, look at that. Already we're starting to get a good rounded slicked edge. Now, camera may not be able to pick that up, but it's rounded, glossed, and smooth to the touch. So I'm going to do top and bottom here, both sides on our straps. And our last strap looking good. Very nice. Our edge is very professional, smooth, and rounded. All right, follow me to Chapter 4. We're going to start working towards getting this hand sewn.